Did you know how much anime takes from India but doesn't say a word about it? And I'm not talking small niche anime either, I mean really big series like Naruto or Dragon Ball. And wait till the end where I discuss one anime which is based completely on India but doesn't even address it. Being Indian and growing up watching anime was a horribly alienating experience. How dare an entirely Japanese industry not represent Indians? Like, what? Bro, that's so crazy. In fact, it's so bad, I think I need to restart the video with a sigh. Yes, I know that wider cultural representation in anime is something that we're all very much aware sucks. We just have to be grateful that it's not as bad as China. Like, man, those Hoyoverse games got me ready to start bleaching my skin. Genshin announced the whole South Asian / Middle Eastern inspired region, and then just filled it with white characters cosplaying as brown people. So, in my disappointment, I moved over to Honkai Star Rail, only to find that there was one single brown-skinned character, and he was the weakest, most unplayable, and just borderline terrible character that they've ever come out with. Don't worry, Arlan, I still love you. I don't even know of any Indian anime characters besides Agni from Black Butler and the few from Dragon Ball, but that might just be my own ignorance, so let me know in the comments if you know of any others. And, like, yeah, I get that black people have the same issue and everything, but let's be real here. Everyone who grew up watching Dragon Ball Z knows that Piccolo was black. Okay, I know how this looks. We'll talk about this later. Man, Dragon Ball was crazy though, literally anyone could get it. As well as the blackface stuff, we had this dude from episode 9 of Dragon Ball.
Hello, can I... Fill her up, please.
Yes, you saw that right. The first brown character we see, and he's a petrol / gas station attendant. We had a lore-accurate 7-Eleven in Dragon Ball back in the 80s. To be fair though, I feel like Toriyama gets quite a bad rep when it comes to race. Aside from the hilarious voice acting, depictions of brown characters in Dragon Ball weren't really that bad. We had Nam, who was pretty badass, and even Oob, who didn't have the accent, which I'm still not sure if I'm disappointed by or not. Just a quick side note, a lot of people seem to think that Oob is black, but Toriyama drew black people like this, not like this. But again, to be fair, I don't think the black characters were technically racist. Toriyama drew them with bigger lips, but in my opinion, I think it would be worse if they were just drawn as dark-skinned versions of every other anime character. Like Nam's strong nose, I think these features are important. Okay, fine, we'll talk about Popo. Yes, in an American context, and even a broadly Western context, it's very easy to read Popo's character design as blackface. But actually, when you look a little closer, it might not be the case. When we look at the origins of his character, we can see that he's actually a depiction of Mahakala, a Hindu deity originating from India who's usually considered the god of time. As the god of time, Mahakala is usually depicted as black in colour. As Wikipedia says, just as all colours are absorbed and dissolved into black, all names and forms are said to melt into those of Mahakala, symbolising his all-embracing, comprehensive nature. Very deep. Aside from appearance, it becomes clear that Popo is based on Mahakala when we look at his relation to the hyperbolic time chamber, with Mahakala being the god of time. And to top it off, he has a turban, Aladdin's vest, and even a flying magic carpet. While not being accurately Indian, at least it's vaguely Middle Eastern. So, awesome, more evidence of Indian roots in anime, right? Well, not exactly. You see, in the English dub that most of us grew up watching, Popo spoke in quite complex sentences and was always quite sophisticated. But in the original Japanese version, Popo is portrayed as extremely simple and primitive, making him appear as nothing more than Kami's servant. When we look at where the character's influence stems from, it becomes clear how disrespectful this really is. Which brings us to the title of this video. Why does anime hate India? Aside from being a bit of a clickbait title, I did seriously want to discuss the lack of any explicit mention of India in a lot of anime. Not because I'm virtue signalling or trying to reach for problems that don't exist, but because as an Indian person myself, I can't help but pay attention to these things. I think it's natural to try to find yourself in the things that you love, which is why I think characters like Piccolo and Knuckles started becoming claimed as black in the first place. Because for some reason, every nerdy black person I've ever known has always been into both Sonic and DBZ. It's just a natural phenomenon at this point. So join me down this rabbit hole as we discover how far the disrespect of India actually goes in anime. Aside from Dragon Ball, one anime that borrows quite heavily from Indian culture is Naruto. The The whole entire energy system is based on chakra, chakra being an ancient Hindu concept which originated in India and describes the energy focal points within our body which we use to channel our power through. Sure, this concept was also adopted by Buddhism being super prevalent in Japan and other East Asian countries, but Buddhism was made by an Indian guy too, so I don't want to hear it. As well as the main power system, there is also some Indian folklore worked directly into the plot of Naruto, the main instance being that of Indra and Ashura. In Naruto, these two are the sons of the Sage of the Six Paths. Try saying that 3 times. But in reality, these names again come from Hinduism. Indra being the god of the storms, and Asuras being demons. There are loads of heroic stories of Indra defeating armies of evil Asuras, but funnily enough, in Naruto this is reversed. Indra is the evil brother who is defeated by the good guy, Ashura. Again, these words are also present in Buddhism, but Naruto specifically makes reference to the Indian origin of Indra through Sasuke Susanoo. Due to him being a descendant of Indra, Sasuke is able to use a powerful move called Indra's Arrow, where he is able to create a giant bow and arrow out of lightning, and he fires this as a lightning bolt. In Hinduism, Indra, being god of the storms, is known to have used a similar tactic. When battling against an evil Ashura who blocked human prosperity and threatened human happiness, Indra used a rainbow as his bow and fired a giant lightning bolt as his arrow in order to defeat him. Sasuke's so-called Indra's Arrow is actually a reference to this. I'm not a Hindu, but it's always so cool to talk about Hinduism because it has so many cool stories that stem from it, like Hanuman the monkey god. I always think it's so cool to study and read about Hindu stories, and it's a shame how obscure it is to the rest of the world. Greek mythology is so often interpreted and talked about, but it's cool to see stories that originate from other places in the world, and India has such a rich culture and background for this sort of thing. Honestly, so many Indian stories would make for such good anime and video game adaptations just as they are. Anyways, despite the Indian references within Naruto, we don't actually get to see any cultural representation within the show, which is quite a shame. We get the vaguely dark-skinned Cloud Village ninjas like Darubi, who I showed earlier, but the only cultural reference we get to them is that Killer Bee is a rapper, so he's obviously black. It's like anime loves India as long as there's no actual Indians around. Us South Asians are simply too dark for the rest of Asia, you see. And this is made increasingly apparent in the anime Burning Kabaddi. Burning Kabaddi is a sports anime based on an Indian sport known as, you guessed it, Kabaddi. Despite it being a completely unheard of sport by most of the world, there is no actual reference made to the Indian origin of it throughout the entire show. You'd think that when trying to introduce people to something new, you'd at least bother to try and explain the origin of it. It's like they're trying to hide it. Though, to be fair, I haven't read the manga, so if this does come up later on, I have no idea. Seeing a Kabaddi anime actually completely blew my mind, because I never would have expected to hear about it in any non-Indian context, never mind anime. So when watching it, I was sort of let down when there wasn't even a nod to India at all. Like I said before, it's like India is all fine as long as it's not spoken about. Don't get me wrong, it was a super fun anime and I really enjoyed it, and I'd even recommend it to anybody who loves sports anime. But I couldn't shake the thought that the lack of any mention at all felt a bit like brushing it under the rug or not wanting to address the elephant in the room, because who would want to hear about India? Again, just to spell it out, obviously I'm not complaining about the lack of representation of Indian people in Japanese animation. It's like saying Indian people should make cartoons about Polish people. There's just no grounds for that argument. I just find it interesting to look at these things as an Indian person, even as a bit of a coconut. I mean, I've never even been to India before. I still think it's important for me to talk about because it's part of my identity. And especially with the recent shift on the internet lately, with the insane amount of racism directed at Indians, I think it's even more important to talk about for me. I think talking about these things is good, and since I have a few interesting points that I wanted to share, I thought I'd share them. I mean, people don't even seem to see Indians as human these days, and most of this seems to stem from cringe TikToks. Like, man, if you're going to give death threats to an entire race of people and talk about deleting India from the world, at least make your reason a bit better than, but oh my god, they're so cringe. Okay, sure, we have other problems. But don't make it seem like scammers only exist in India, or like poverty doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. This might blow some people's minds, but there are actually developed cities in India. There are actually universities and hospitals and call centres. All jokes aside though, it feels good to talk about this sort of thing. it just feels like there isn't really the place to have these sorts of discussions anywhere. So I might as well have them on my own channel, and then people who actually give a crap can find it and join in. That said, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun making it, and I'd love to talk about a lot more random things on this channel, so please consider subscribing. If you had any thoughts while watching the video, please feel free to leave a comment, and hopefully I can get back to you about it. I really appreciate any support, so please leave a like if you enjoyed, and thanks so much for watching. Take care.